Okay. We call to order this meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council, Monday, June 8th. It's an electronic meeting, and we'll begin with the pledge. So Sam, if you prepare us for that. We'll follow that by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks everyone for showing up today. And if you don't mind, Carol, will you call roll, please?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak is not present. Councilmember Cheryl Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Here. We have no minutes to approve for this meeting. So Sam, if you will get the first caller ready and remind them to stop listening on the computer if they are ahead of time.
Absolutely. He is joining us now.
Hi, Fred. If you don't mind, your mic's muted right now. You're gonna have to unmute. Just say your name, even though we can already see it, and your address.
Fred Edgman.
And your address.
309 James Boulevard.
All right. The next 3 minutes are all yours, sir.
I'm sorry, I was adjust my volume.
Yeah. So the next 3 minutes are yours.
Okay, wonderful. What I'm asking about is I live at 309 James Boulevard. With the Rainbow Lake overflow parking, there's been a surge of traffic and not only that, but just parking along the trolley tracks. I think it was a great idea what you all did to, obviously put signs up on the Ohio street and other areas, but the problem is that it's overflowing to my area. There is no, there's people from all over. I've been, daily going down to Rainbow Lake and checking the license plates, and I would say less than half of them are Hamilton County tags. There's people coming from all over, and basically what I'm asking for is put up some sort of street sign, no parking other than Rainbow Lake. I think nobody in Old Town deserves to have, a parking lot on their street. Yesterday they were lined up down one side. I heard one guy get out of his car and made the comment, yeah, we can park here. There's no signs. There's just been several, last weekend I had an RV, a pretty good sized RV parked in front of our house for 7-8 hours. So what I'm asking is just if, I understand the overflow issue. That's one thing. If there needs to be another trailhead, that's, I understand that, but I just don't think the citizens in Old Town deserve to have this traffic in front of their street. I've got a 2-year-old, we're out in the yard playing and you've got people driving up, parking from all over. I don't know these people. It's a safety issue. It brings people in. I have no idea. So that's all I ask is if you can just put up no parking signs, put up a sign at the trailhead saying, parking is only permitted here at the Rainbow Lake trailhead. The adjacent streets are, I think I want people to be able to go to Rainbow Lake just like I do, but the problem is it's gotten out of hand. And at some point we've got to make some sort of, control of what's going on.
This isn't really a discussion time now, Fred, but the purpose of this is so that we know the kinds of things we need to discuss. Carol, could you make note of that? And we can talk about this at the next meeting.
I have it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Sam, do you have another caller lined up?
Yes, sir. We have one more.
From my years in broadcasting, I feel like we should be asking them a trivia question so they can win a prize. Hi, David. Your mic is muted, so you'll have to unmute it. So according to the protocol for this thing, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you bet, sir. Just state your name for the record and your address, and then the next 3 minutes are yours. So you'll need to turn the computer on.
Hold on, let me pause the YouTube video.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to mute that.
Okay, say my name. It's David Spiller. I live on James Boulevard at 307. I just finally figured out the YouTube video, so I don't know what y'all been talking about beforehand, but I just wanted to report a little bit something that I saw with all these cars parking along James Boulevard. I'm sorry.
She's fine. It only makes it better.
So I live on the trolley tracks, and I do think the car situation for people hiking at Rainbow Lake is getting a bit out of hand. I didn't report this to anybody, but right before Rainbow Lake was shut down in March, excuse me, when all the, I guess when the gyms had closed down and everybody was hiking and there were a ton of cars, there was a car, parked across the house, across the street from my house. That's there's a big kind of double lot there with a big garden. And I saw a hiker come out of there kind of at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, about to get into his car, looks around, urinates in that person's yard. I was in my home office, kind of saw it as it happened and said, I can't believe that just happened. And then considered calling you guys. And I think like the next day, Rainbow Lake was shut down and just never reported it. So, I just wanted to, I guess let you know that, as a resident of this street, I'm finding the car situation a little crazy. It just backs up and backs up. It's a lot of people. I don't know, I don't know. I don't recognize anybody, so I assume it's a lot of people from different, maybe from Chattanooga, maybe from other locations. I understand the need to social distance. I do, and I think it's good that we don't have cars piled up, real densely right by the Rainbow Lake trailhead. But I would also say that, I saw this one experience with somebody urinating right by where their car was parked on somebody's yard or in their hedges. I thought that was pretty awful. And, I think at some point, this is all of James Boulevard become a free-for-all parking lot for anybody who wants to do anything in Old Town, take a walk, go to any of the trailheads. When does that end? Can people park all the way down Mississippi to the Pastoria if it's a really busy day? That's an absurd example, but it's getting a bit out of hand for the residents here.
Sure.
We have little children. We try to manage our children well, and our neighbors have little children, but a big fear is that kids will get out, they'll be on their bikes, something like that, and there'll be a car that hits them. The more cars there are, the faster they seem to be going, and the harder it is to control all of that.
All right. So you missed the end of the call. This citizens' opportunity to address council isn't really where we have discussions about these things, but it's where we find out what kind of things we need to have discussions about. And I've asked that it be on the agenda item for the next council meeting. And in the meantime, if you do see somebody urinating on a lawn, don't hesitate to call.
Yeah, I meant to call the next day, but then literally the whole thing stopped because
Sure.
the Rainbow Lake Trail was shut down and I got busy and sort of forgot about it.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Well, thanks a bunch. And we're aware of it. I live in Old Town too. And yeah, we're going to have to figure out all these solutions are a little more complex than you'd think they'd be. But
well, I don't know if to say this, but I think, and this is my neighbor told me that Sunset up on Lookout, there's a small lot and that's it. Like that's the lot. And you either get a parking spot there or, you can't just park all over the neighborhood. I don't know if that's in the, something possible, but it just does seem like we've got too many cars in too tight of a space.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll bring it back up, and it's a reasonable thing to be concerned about. So thanks for doing this and talking about it.
Sure.
All right. Bye, David.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have next. Well, before we do this is minorly citizens. Can you guys see me? Is everybody still there? It's Sam that disappeared. Okay. Before because this is in a citizens thing, does anybody have any Girl Scout cookies with them at the moment?
Yes.
They're downstairs.
I want to read this. This is from a citizen, and I just think it's the kindest thing. And it's a good time to apply it. Dear Mayor Landrum, and this is from Annalise Bevins. Dear Mayor Landrum, thank you and also the town council for everything you do. Take these cookies as a token of my appreciation. These cookies were given to you and the town council on behalf of the Signal Mountain 8th grade Girl Scouts. I hope that you and the council enjoyed these cookies. I really appreciate all the hard work you do and the town council, especially during the recent struggles with the pandemic. Thank you very much. I really hope you enjoy all the cookies. Sincerely, Annalise Bevins. So
nice.
Was so nice. That was the sweetest thing. Okay. Now let's move into resolutions. Awarding a contract for Jane Cove Culvert-Stormwater. I'll read the header and then we can entertain a motion. Sure, I have the right one. Yeah. A resolution authorizing the town manager to award a contract to Brian Sitton of Construction Company, to the Brian Sitton Construction Company for the amount of $37,853 as the lowest and best bid for a culvert replacement project, including water line replacement on Jane Cove for the town of Signal Mountain, and authorizing an additional $3,800 in contingency funds. So Boyd, if you want to take over and fill us in a bit more.
Before he gets started, I need to make a minor correction in your
What do you got?
reading.
Yeah.
It's for $37,853.75.
All right. So noted.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is the project that I mentioned at the last meeting. There's a culvert that goes under Jane Cove that has deteriorated and is collapsing to the point where we're actually seeing some roadway failure. This we've bid it out, and I mentioned it at the last meeting because frankly we weren't sure how long the road would hold up, but we didn't have to take emergency action. So this is coming to you for approval. It includes completely replacing the culvert, the head walls, and in addition, there's a water line that runs adjacent, actually perpendicular to that. That's going to have to be replaced with PVC, so we'll be replacing that with ductile iron. So it's a combination project with water and stormwater, and that the water line replacement was bid as a separate line item, so it's combined but separate project, so we can get all of that done by the same contractor.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Did you get those, Carol? Was it Bill?
I did.
Suzanne?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes.
I'm here. Can you guys see me?
Oh, we can now.
I'm not going to vote because I don't know what you were talking about. I had trouble getting on the Zoom, but so my vote will be abstaining.
Okay.
But I didn't know if you guys could see me or not.
No, I didn't know you were here.
Sorry. Okay, I'm here.
All right. Carol, you'll note that, right?
I'm making a note that she entered the meeting at 4:17. Is that acceptable?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, next. I'm just going to go down this list, Carol. It's weird jumping around, so if I'm on the wrong one, just stop me as soon as I start.
Will do.
Kind of thought you would. That'd be all right. Hold on just a second. So next we have a resolution awarding a contract for roadway repairs and construction on Bugle Way. And this one is a resolution authorizing the town manager to award a contract to Faultless Inc. for the amount of $32,500 as the lowest and best bid for the repair and reconstruction of portions of Bugle Way for the town of Signal Mountain, and further authorizing $3,250 in contingency funds for the project. Any background we need, Boyd?
These are, this and the next one as well are projects that have been on the radar. If you'll recall, this year we had additional funds for paving and road work. After the initial regular paving, then they've put bid specs together on these two projects that are a little bit more involved than just your regular repave. So that's pretty much it. This is just a continuation and use of additional funds that we have budgeted for these two projects that were beyond the scope of just regular paving.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I think Susanna was first on that. Carol, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, shoot.
Seconded by Cheryl.
Got it.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yes. I'm having technical difficulties.
It's all right.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Next, we have another paving resolution. This is a resolution authorizing the town manager to award a contract to Jason Helton Construction LLC in the amount of $23,750 as the lowest and best bid for the replacement. Nope, this is not paving. Did I jump to the wrong one? Or
Yes.
Hey, you're out of order.
I think you read the same one. That's the same, that's the last. You just
Well,
repeated.
they're in a different order in my. Did we have two paving in a row? Because this next one is.
I'm looking at Faultless.
Yes, there are two pavings in a row.
I read the second one first, perhaps.
No,
No,
this one
this
is
should
for,
be.
this second one is for $53,500 for Fern Trail.
There it is. Okay, thank you. This is a resolution authorizing the town manager to award a contract to Faultless Inc. for the amount of $53,500 as the lowest and best bid for the repair and reconstruction of portions of Fern Trail for the town of Signal Mountain, and further authorizing $5,350 in contingency funds for the project.
Um,
Go, Boyd.
Yes, we bid these two projects separately. I think you have the recommendation for both of them, and on the Bugle Way project, Faultless was significantly lower than the other bidders. In this case, they were all pretty close. We bid them so that if there was separation like that on both, we might be able to take advantage of using two separate contracts. In this case, Faultless is only $285 more than the second lowest bid. So the two projects combined, they are by far the lowest combined bid. And we spoke with the technical low bid on this with Wright Brothers, and they even concurred that it made most sense to have this contractor do both projects.
All right, do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
second,
I have Councilmember Murdoch as the second on that. Okay.
Any other discussion? I guess I have one question, Boyd. If we, in bidding these, would we generally, or do we sometimes bid them as a package, or do they all have to be bid individually?
When we're doing the paving, we do that as a package with all the roads and everything combined. But with these, because they were a little different and involved different work, it just seemed to be worthwhile to take that approach. Again, if we had the same situation as the other project, but one of the other bidders was significantly lower, we could have taken advantage of having two low bidders. In this case, one was significantly lower, the others were just all right there together. So it made sense ultimately to bundle them in the award, but it may not have worked out that way in the bids. So it was just an attempt to make sure we got the best deal.
Okay. Any other discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
yes,
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landon.
Yes. All right, now moving on down. This is a resolution authorizing the town manager to award a contract to Jason Helton Construction LLC in the amount of $23,750 as the lowest and best bid for the replacement of the roof on Town Hall for the town of Signal Mountain, and further authorizing $2,000 in contingency funds for the project. Boyd, if you want to take over from there, and who was the architect on this?
The architect,
Yes, do we have one?
no. This is just replacing the roof. That's in place. So it is replacing like with like, architectural shingles, same color and everything. We did bid this out. We only had one bidder, but it is within budget. It's budgeted in facilities maintenance, and we are seeing some water damage from roof issues. So we'd like to go ahead and get this taken care of.
All right, can we entertain a motion and we'll have a discussion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
waiting.
I have Councilmember Lusk as the second on that. Is that correct?
No, I was late.
I think it was me, Carol.
Okay. Got it.
All right, motion in a second. So someone, and this is for Harry and Boyd, an architect told me they think we might be missing something, that when we have a roof being replaced on any building that's over 5,000 square feet, that we're supposed to have an architect on it. Is that possibly true and we don't know about it?
I'm not aware of that. I know there are requirements for projects that will alter structural, mechanical, or electrical systems, and on occupancies that are assembly. But I'm not aware that any of those would apply in this situation.
Yeah, Boyd and I talked about this in connection with another project last week. And if there's no new design I don't think there's an architect required. We didn't specifically look at that question. It would be news to me, but
obviously, if there is, we want to do it. I mean, we wouldn't want to be stepping out. What do you think? If you're confident enough, we can obviously, I mean, we're going to vote one way or the other. Would it be something that during the course of the meeting, you could take another look at and we could table for a few minutes?
I can try to look right now. I just don't think if they're not required new plans or specifications, it would surprise me, but I'm going to look.
Yeah, it was just brought to my attention and it's,
All we're doing is ripping off the existing roof down to the decking.
yeah,
And
and putting
replacing
new,
it with a similar product, right?
right.
I think it sounds pretty straightforward. I think we can vote on it.
As if you want to move forward with it, you can certainly make the
There you go.
reword the motion, but subject to verification of that.
I'd be very comfortable with that. Would you be willing to, whoever made the motion, to withdraw that motion? Just to clarify, just so we make sure we're doing it right, which I suspect we are.
Who made the motion?
I have Councilmember Murdoch made the original motion.
Okay, I'll rescind the motion.
And Bill, will you rescind the second?
No, I have,
Rescind the second.
Oh, that was
Thank
Andy,
you.
the second. Thank you. All right. That's same motion, just modify it. How should we word that, Harry?
Sorry, I was looking at something.
We're going to modify the motion so that if you did, so we can pass it subject to making sure that we're doing this correctly.
Well, somebody can move to approve the proposal subject to confirmation that no architect is required.
Susanna, are you willing to do that?
Yep. Do I need to say that?
Yes.
So I move to approve this motion, subject to an architect, subject to a review to make sure an architect isn't required to sign off on the roof replacement.
I think that's fine.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dana Ingram.
Yes. All right, next on the agenda, we move, that's all of them, right, Carol? Did I get all the resolutions?
I believe so,
Yep.
yes, sir.
Okay. Ordinances, fiscal year 2019-20 budget re-estimate, first reading. So Boyd, will you give us a rundown of what the updates include?
Sure. Most of these are just minor adjustments to various departments. And I may defer to Carol on some. We are, in terms of general fund, increasing expenditures in finance, $500, in police department by $15,858. We're decreasing expenditures in admin by $1,000, just judicial by $2,500, operating transfers by $33,000, decreasing expenditures in park and rec by $4,800, decreasing revenues in intergovernment in the amount of $29,050. Revenue and charges for service by $16,500, miscellaneous by $50,000, and increasing revenue from general fund balance in the amount of $73,608. It's in general fund. In the library fund, increasing revenues and other by $125 and decreasing revenue from library fund balance by $125. In state street aid, decreasing expenditures in the amount of $355,945, decreasing revenue and transfers by $33,000. When it's all said and done in that fund, decreasing amount in the budget in state street aid by $355,945.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this based on reestimates from the state street aid?
I do have it showing that we are showing these decreases in projects for James Boulevard and Shoal Creek.
These
I'm sorry, let me restate that. Let me correct that. I'm showing increases in those two projects and then a decrease in the Old Town Sidewalk project because that's not going to happen until until future years. So we are covering for actual increased expenditures in the budget for James Boulevard and Shoal Creek Falls, and those are projects that are completed. And so we know pretty much what those numbers are now. And then we are deferring some of the funds that we were setting aside for the Old Town sidewalks into next year and other years following.
I don't recall that conversation. About
in these projects, they'll be budgeted in 1 year, and depending on when the process actually starts, you may or may not expend those funds, and then they would have to be carried into another year. As a project is underway, generally we'll just wait until the project concludes and then make the full adjustment at year's end. Or project end rather. I don't think there's anything in any of these that represent expenditures above and beyond anything that's been approved. They're just realignments in these projects.
Right. I think my comment had as much to do with the Old Town Sidewalks project, because I don't think we talked about that not happening in this year.
Well, we had funds budgeted in hopes that it would, but I mean, as we're literally about to close out the year.
You're right. I understand. Right. Okay.
Yeah, this time of year, it's hard to keep track of which year we're talking about.
Yep. I was in the wrong year.
No,
Totally confess it.
Certainly understood. And then the water fund, decreasing expenditures 660,000 and revenue of the same amount from fund balance. That is the process of carrying forward the funds for the meter project. That's
All right.
it.
Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Gonna abstain since I wasn't at that meeting.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. So that's the first reading. The second reading will take place at the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Next, we have fiscal year 2021 budget. This is the first reading. I'll go ahead and mention now that the next meeting will include the public hearing for this. So quite a few updates in this as well. So same drill, Boyd, if you want to go over what's been modified.
You want to do that ahead of motion?
it's always awkward to know because somebody
Right.
might
I
not.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I think council discussion's after the motion,
Okay.
but your setup is
Okay.
prior.
Just wanted to make sure before we got too deep. This is a little less straightforward in terms of changes.
Boyd?
This- Yes.
Boy, what I probably should do prior though is read the header.
Okay.
Don't you think, Carol?
I agree.
Okay. So let me make sure we're on, again, a lot of pages here. Let me scroll. That's 19, 20, 20. Here's 2021. Okay. This is an ordinance of the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021, hereinafter known as the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget ordinance. So go ahead, Boyd. Thanks.
This year, as we've discussed, we had a meeting for the better part of a day and went over this budget in detail. And this year, more than any I can recall, we really took a hard look at capital projects and major expenditures because of the uncertainty that we have in the economic environment that we're dealing with in regards to the pandemic and how that's going to impact revenues and expenditures. We're really probably in a better position than most places in terms of revenue issues, as the vast majority of our revenue comes from property taxes. It's likely that we won't see much of a disturbance there. But what is really uncertain, and we're starting to see the fluctuations already, are expenses in industries that are affected and may have shutdowns and so forth, and interrupting supply chains, and that also then generally results in increased costs. So we just simply don't know and wanted to take a very cautious approach. The budget as a whole, when it's said and done, we'll be anticipating approximately 45% fund balance to budget ratio, which is well above what we need to do. And I would suggest that into the year, if we're able to establish a comfort level, we can go back and look at major projects like paving and see if we want to do some additional work there. But going in, we wanted to make sure that we had, for lack of a better term, some buffer if we were to hit some major issues in terms of revenue or general operating costs. Beyond that, again, absent capital projects, the budget is very consistent with what we've had this past year. After our last meeting, we do have a 1.5% cost of living increase for all employees, and we have built in changes to our observed holiday policy. We are adding Martin Luther King Day as an observed holiday, and we're also observing Veterans Day for those employees who are veterans of the military, National Guard, armed forces of those, any other branch. Beyond that, operationally is extremely consistent with what we've had this past year.
Thank you. We had, as far as what the council added into this budget, was 7.5% raise after review for the town manager. We also added in funds that had been budgeted for the following year to get the town's email system switched over to something other than pigeons with strings, notes tied to their ankles. Should make things better. So do we hear a motion on this first reading?
Motion to approve, motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion about it? Yes.
If I
Carol?
might. In your packet is also a couple of pages that reflect the changes from the original town manager's proposed budget that the council made over 2 different meetings. And there is a summary of these changes that are now incorporated in this ordinance. So I just want to make clear that the document from the town manager's proposed budget is changed by these items.
I'm looking through for that where these changes leave our general fund percentage balance. Is that reflected in here?
That should be in your packet also, yes.
Do you know what page? I'm digging through the pages looking for it.
I'm sorry, it looks like this.
Wait a second, let me switch back over. Looks like, okay, thank you. That'll help.
I'm not seeing that. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that one in mine.
To answer your question, Mayor, again, we anticipate ending unassigned fund balances and a budget at 45%.
45. So we went from 47 to 45. Is that right? Since we started this?
I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah, Carol, somehow that one didn't get in there.
It is the
Page
page just
22.
prior to this ordinance, the first page of the ordinance that you just read. Is
Okay.
the page just prior.
Let me scroll.
Yeah,
back
it's
up there.
page 22
Page 22.
in your packet.
Okay, so it's not down at the bottom. Got you.
So it's ahead of the ordinance.
Head of the ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on this topic?
So is this just a transfer from fund balance? It's not a tax increase?
We're actually projecting the budget as it stands that we will put $61,863 into fund balance. If we don't go back and add any capital or anything in later.
Okay. Your video's muted, Amy.
I know. Was there a tax increase included in this budget?
No.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote on the first reading of the 2021 budget, please?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Can I abstain?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. All right, next we have an ordinance amending Town Code 1-102, order of business. This will be a first reading. And Harry, you should probably jump in on this one and tell us what you're trying to solve for and how you solved it. I think you're muted, Harry. There you go.
What the code provides right now is each council meeting has a number of items that are the regular order of business. The code currently provides that the town council can vote to not hear one of those items. The result of that is that the agenda will have all the items that are required under regular business. The town council starts its meeting, and if the town council members want to not have one of the regular items of business, they can vote not to do so. What that results in is somebody might come, let's take citizens' opportunity to address the council. The council presently can vote at this or any other meeting not to have that item of business. So last time we had a discussion about whether that should be changed or not. So the proposals, the two options that you have are, number one, allow the town council at one meeting to vote not to have one of the regular items of business at the next or a future meeting. That way the agenda will be absolutely correct and everybody will know what's going to be on the agenda. The other,
But that's not all inclusive though. Other things might still be on it.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, things can be added
Okay.
outside of the 6 or 7 regular items of business. The other, I think it's option 2, is just removes the council's ability to remove any of the regular items of business. Although you can add discussion items and that sort of thing.
So the first one, well, this is a case where it seems we need to have a discussion before because we don't know which option we're going to be talking about. Harry or our parliamentarian, is that okay, you think?
Yeah, I think you're fine. I mean, both options have been posted. But I think it's a good idea to discuss them.
You can weigh the pros and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody, and I was the one who opened this can of worms, and it just seemed, and it always has seemed like this is something that could be confusing and could cause it to appear like you don't want citizens to speak, especially if a lot of citizens showed up to speak. And as I've said multiple times, I never would want to be a part of that. So this just clarifies that and says, if you're going to do it and you want to have something a little more akin to a focused meeting where you're focusing on one thing and you eliminate all the items, and this really came about, we were reminded of it again when we wanted to have a budget session. And the budget sessions tend to go multiple hours and you're going to focus on the budget. And there will be ample time, even a public hearing involved, for citizens to be involved, and email works and we can still communicate. Now, the downside to that existing in any form is that means you can have a meeting where citizens are not allowed to speak. And that is potentially problematic for some as well. And I understand that as well. So we have two options on the table. One says, we just get rid of that. We say citizens can speak at every meeting. And I'm okay with that too. But it seems like having focused meetings where you can time it out and know what you're going to do, where you need to have an emergency meeting, because this, if we vote for number 2, even an emergency meeting has all of these things. So if you need to meet for 10 minutes just to get something done that has to be done, you have no way of knowing how long that meeting is going to be. So that's my understanding of this. I'd love to know how everybody else feels about the options. And I'm okay either way. I'm one vote. But other thoughts?
I think I'm more inclined to remove the wording so that we do offer citizens a chance to speak at every regular meeting.
I agree.
Yeah.
Me too.
I wouldn't want to run the risk of a council. Of course, any council in the future can change about anything they want. But I wouldn't want to run the risk of a council getting into the habit of at every meeting they vote, okay, our next meeting, we're not going to allow that to happen. And the next month they do the same thing. You could go a year and not hear from the citizens. And I wouldn't want to set that up for that possibility.
Matt, will you make a motion willing to make a motion along those lines?
Carol, clean that up for me, and that's a motion.
Can I touch on one thing ahead of that? When you said it at every regular meeting, there's not a distinction now or in this about what's a regular meeting or a special call meeting or a work session. It's every meeting.
Then I will take
clarify
take that wording out and make that every meeting.
All right. Do we have a motion, Carol?
What I've got here is that you are, you've made a motion to accept option 2 for every meeting.
Yeah, is there a header on that? Let me just read the header. This says, an ordinance to amend Title 1, Chapter 1, Section 1-102 of the Town of Signal Mountain Municipal Code in reference to order of business for town council meetings. And because this is short, just to make sure everybody's clear on it, and those who are listening or maybe didn't download the packet, Title 1, Chapter 1, Section 1-102 of the Town of Signal Mountain Municipal Code shall be deleted in its entirety and shall be replaced with the following language. 1, regular order of business for the town council meeting shall include 1, call to order by the mayor, 2, pledge, 3, roll call, 4, approval of minutes, 5, citizens' opportunity to address council, 6, resolutions, 7, ordinances, 8, communications and reports from mayor and council, 9, reports from committees and boards, and 10, adjourn. Other agenda items, invocation, moment of silence, presentations, proclamations, public hearings, manager's report, discussion may be included on an ongoing or special basis at the discretion of the council or town manager. We have a motion on the table for
Second.
that. And we have a second from Bill Lusk. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Muted.
Hey,
We didn't need,
I said yes, I'm unmute, sorry.
and I'm sorry, what was the vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
yes. Am I glad that one's done? Okay. Yeah, so that's it. Now we're down to discussion. Recreation facilities. We have at least 3 areas to focus on today: swimming pool, MACC, and the ball fields. Do you mind if I just get the MACC one out of the way? Because that should be easy. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Mhm.
Discussion. So just as a quick report, we had that you all approved that we could do a recording for the Nightfall opener, and it really went well. And we got a lot of positive promotion in all of Nightfall's information that they sent out, talking about the Mountain Arts Community Signal Center in Signal Mountain. What we probably should have done last time was talked about the rest of the month, because the entire month of June needs to be taken care of. So I don't know that we have to vote on this, but or maybe Boyd or Harry, you might chime in if you think we do. We basically want to do the same thing we did last week, this week, and we would have normally done it yesterday, so we were ahead of time, but didn't, or today, but we needed to wait until the council met. It would make it a lot easier if we could go ahead and schedule the rest of the month. So I'm asking permission for us to do what we did again throughout the month of June.
I think since you voted on the last one, you probably ought to vote to do it for the rest of the month, or.
Okay. Easily enough. Do you want me to form that as a motion?
Yeah, I think you should.
We don't happen to have what we had from last time handy, do we? How we worded that? Does anybody recall? Carol's got it.
I was gonna say, just give me a quick second.
Take your time. The world's moving too fast already.
Okay, it was kind of it got kind of back and forth. So what I have in my notes, because I haven't formalized the minutes yet, is to allow the event to occur, and we gave a specific date, and approve this agreement subject to amending the rental agreement to include requiring face masks for everyone except the performers, general COVID pre-screening, entering the building, and complying with COVID guidelines and regulations as issued by Governor Lee's executive orders.
So I would like to make a motion that we extend the privileges granted at the last meeting for the month of June to record nightfall councils with the same, basically extend what we've already done.
A second.
Okay, 2 seconds. Okay, and I lost it somewhere at the very end. To extend the privileges granted at the last meeting for the nightfall,
For the nightfall recordings at the MACC throughout the month of June.
got it, thank you.
And so that's the motion. Susanna, do you still second that?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, discussion.
And
Somebody have any questions? Go.
That excludes audience participation. It's only the performers and their staff.
We'll keep it just like we did it. We've already got a contract. All right, any further discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. All right, let's talk about the pool. Sam, is Jared available? If you could bring him in.
Yes, sir, he is. I'll bring him in. Right.
Fantastic. Is that okay, Boyd?
Mhm.
There he is. So what, and anyone correct me if I state this improperly, but what we asked Jared to do last night was to come up with a concrete plan that we could discuss and perhaps vote on specifically regarding the pool and at least one possible way of opening the pool. So Jared, where are we with that?
Well, I've talked to Bo last week, and I have all, the hand sanitizers and the stations that we need. We can do that. We've talked about removing the pool deck furniture and put that back in storage. And Bo made a good point of our lap lanes. We've got 8 of them. So take 1, 3, 5, and 7. You go to one side of the pool, 2, 4, 6, and 8. You go to the other side of the pool. That way we're not, right on top of each other. So, and we can, have markers where people need to be. We've got all that available.
So we don't really have this in front of us in any kind of a written proposal. So we're going to probably just need to talk that through. But it sounds like we're talking about lap swim only.
Yeah, to clarify, as I recall from our last meeting, that was the scenario we were asked to firm up. That at that time, general opening and usage was not considered. So we just looked at any of the details that we needed to relative to the lap swim scenario beyond what we had discussed in that meeting. And that was really about all there was left. We've looked at the number of lifeguards we'd need and all of that for the last discussion. And we just really looked at details of how it would work. And if the restrooms aren't open, concession isn't open, and we remove all of the deck furniture and people basically use what they bring with them and leave, and we spread them out, even so there's only 4 people getting in at each side of the pool. then beyond that, it's really a matter of just managing it and staffing it.
All right, so I'm
Would
willing.
this be for kids and adults or adults only?
Given our last discussion, we were talking about making it 18 and over.
18 and over.
For entry into the area, so that we wouldn't have a situation where you had an adult lap swimming, but they wanted to bring their kids as well.
Right.
So, that's what we were looking at the last discussion.
Can we consider a way so that the swim team, because they're not adults, but they do have an instructor, could have some time so that they could stay in shape and practice? And it's with all of the other same rules, as we talked about, there would need to be and I think Jared, you said you would be the one who would do it. There would need, is that correct? Need to have an adult there, somebody else, not just the lifeguards who are teenagers.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Jared all the time.
Go ahead, Bo.
I'm just saying it wouldn't be Jared all the time. I mean, we basically have, unless we hired an adult, we have about 4 rec staff that could alternate through there. I don't.
What
No,
if, could we entertain I've got a thought, and I mean, I'm interested to hear what other people think about it. Because I really wish that we could come up with a proposal that would bring us some kind of consensus, you know, to the pool use. And I've given it a fair amount of thought. And we've talked about this a little bit, but if we sort of broadened that more so that there was a block of time during the day where there could be some just regular recreational swimming and people could make reservations. I think that I've been asking around, and I've heard in Stewart Heights that they've got a much more ambitious plan than what any of us have entertained, but I think it's gone pretty well. I know we have to be mindful of the, you know, concerns that we have going on, but I also am inclined to think that it wouldn't be just out of the realm of possibility to allow some family swim time. And I say that thinking it might, I mean, our families and our children, especially children up here, are being asked to live within a certain new way of thinking and doing things, and a framework of rules and things like that. And maybe we should give, you know, families up here an opportunity to utilize this town asset and see how it goes.
I just don't know that I'm comfortable with doing that until the numbers stay down for an extended period of time, given what happened last week with the COVID numbers. I did read up on Stewart Heights pool today. When they hit 75 people in there, then they start paying closer attention, as it were. And when they hit 80, then they start limiting the hours that people can stay. So they're definitely limiting the number. I think they've beefed up on their on the cleaning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But some of the other ones I checked with, like even the Y, they're open for lap swims or lane, only in lanes for their members, and that's pretty much it. And of course, the county pools and the ones in the state parks are all closed. Period. Red Bank's not even going to revisit it until the end of this month. So, you know, we're not alone in this, and it's a very difficult decision, but I'm thinking maybe a slower opening, maybe start with the lap swims with adults and see how that goes, see how the numbers go. I mean, we're at the beginning of the summer. We've got the full summer to work toward this. Hopefully, before too terribly long, we will be able to open it up and let the kids come back. I'm just not really comfortable doing that at this time.
I think it's
Susanna, I'm definitely on board with you to find a way to open up the pool. So I'm more on the Stewart Heights side of more of a ambitious way of finding a way for families to swim and utilize the pool. It's an outside pool. I don't know why we can't wipe down the seating like they do at gyms. They wipe down the equipment. So that's my opinion.
I mean, it would, you know, thinking about this, I mean, you would have to have a very organized, structured and careful attention to, you know, all of this in place. Because, you know, people have to understand, you know, and maybe we're not ready to do this. Maybe we do start with lap swimming, but in thinking about trying to open it up so that more people can enjoy it, that people are asked, you know, clean up after yourself, wipe your chair down, be a good neighbor.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That can be a requirement that you have to bring your own stuff to wipe it down.
And I think if it were open in, you know, blocks of time, so you had a 2-hour block in the morning for lap swimming, and then, you know, a couple hours in the middle of the day for family swim, and then close the pool down, shut it down, you know, clean everything, sanitize everything. And it probably would require opening the restrooms if you did that, because I don't want to encourage anybody to go in the pool,
But
go to the bathroom in the pool. But
sorry. I was just gonna say, when you're talking about the restrooms, I think it's important to understand that like restaurants that are open have their bathrooms open. So it doesn't make sense to me why we would close down the bathroom in a pool when other places you can visit have bathrooms open. So I think
it's just another layer of
capacity, like they're doing in restaurants that are open.
Yeah, you've missed some conversations, because we got to this through a series of conversations about not opening it full. If it was opening it fully, I would agree with you completely. But what the town was asked to do was to talk about lane swimming, because that seems like a potential way. And again, you've missed these meetings, but I was the one who kind of pushed for even that we need to consider some way, because it's a town asset. It costs us money whether it's open or closed. We don't make money on it even if it's open and it's at full capacity. So this isn't a profit thing. But you know, I have a lot of sympathy for people who want the pool opened normally. I get that. And we have the responsibility, though, to make sure that we follow county and state and CDC guidelines to at least create the possibility so that that can happen.
Sure.
And that, I just don't see that as the form of a full opening. And there are modified reopenings happening at many pools, but the strictures from each one varies by the community. And Stewart Heights is 400 people. Signal Mountain is about 9,000 people for a public pool. That's a very different scenario. We also have a really tight budget. We don't have a lot of extra staff to do the kinds of cleanings and things that happen. So that's why the bathroom's closed. That's why restricting it to lane swimming. But I would still like to put out there, and I recognize we probably couldn't do it this week because it sounds like we've got 3 or 4, ideas that are in different places. But maybe the Green Giants could propose something to us as the way they could use, based on if we came up with a way for lap swimming to take place, that they would manage allowing their kids to lane swim only. And I told myself I wasn't going to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's honest, real experience. I took my grandchildren to a pool with nobody at it but me and my grandchildren yesterday. And little kids in a swimming pool are not going to social distance from other families. It's when a child comes up out of the water, it doesn't matter if they're swimming in Clorox. They're going to spew into your face all the joy that they've taken in from being underwater, and they come up for a gasp. I mean, I watched it. I tried to say, so how could you do this with kids? And I just think it's really impossible. I'm gonna give one other example. I know some mommies have been trying to do some things where they would take their kids out to like a wide open space with a couple of families and spread them out and say, all right, you stay on this side of the line and you stay on that side of the line. When you get 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, I don't care what kind of parent you are. The kids are going to run into each other because that's what kids do. And it's our responsibility to come up with something that creates the possibility of not contributing to community spread of a global pandemic in our own community at a time when the numbers are rising. So I'm adamant that I think we need to find a way, I mean, on one vote, but I think we need to find a way so that a responsible use of our pool can take place. And I'll even go so far as to say, I don't know that we should charge anything. I think the concept of having, at this point, pool passes is ridiculous because nobody's going to get their money's worth out of that. I'm just talking about, can we discuss and find a way to use our pool responsibly for those citizens who can maybe use it?
Well, that's kind of like the discussion that we had about Rainbow Lake. You know, let's give it a shot. And from the two gentlemen we heard from a little earlier, it hasn't worked at all the way we envisioned it might. And I just fear that the whole pool issue would be worse even than what we're seeing now with Rainbow Lake.
It's a very different thing we're trying to do. You could say the same thing about sidewalks, but you know, people walk on sidewalks, and lane swimming is something restricted. But it's different and it's difficult. And I know.
I mean, I agree with you with what you're saying, Dana, and I get it. I'm just telling you, you know, I was just looking out my window here at my house, and there's 6 little boys running around our neighborhood together. They are not related. They are not social distancing. I'm not condoning what they're doing or not. And I'm not saying that whether I think that's good or not good. I just think there are a lot of parents up here who are kind of letting their children play and interact with other people. I don't know, you know, how that fits into the discussion here, because I think it's up to each family, and it's up to parents to as to how much they're going to let their children, you know, come into contact, in close contact with other children. And then I also think, like, I'm totally all for the lane swimming on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm like, well, that's not fair. I mean, maybe nobody should be able to go swimming. I mean, if we're asking children to sacrifice being able to go to the pool, then maybe nobody should be able to, because I mean, I could, you know, I don't know. I'm a little bit all over the place with all of this. I'm oh, here's my cat. I'm a little bit all over the place with this, and I think a lot of us are. It's really hard to deliberate about these things and feel like you're making these decisions that affect so many people up here, and everybody's got an opinion about what the right thing to do is, you know? So somebody's going to be mad with whatever we decide.
Is the country club pool open, since I missed the last discussion on this?
Yes, you can make reservations. You can go once a week for a 4-hour block, and they assign chairs. You can have 2 lounge chairs or a table with 4 chairs around it. And I don't think they have lifeguards up there. I think it's up to everybody to kind of self-regulate in terms of social distancing.
So, I mean, I guess that's my question. A pool 1.5 miles with the same residents interacting at whatever level of social distancing, it just seems, it doesn't make sense to me why we would only do lap swimming when there's literally a pool 1.5 miles away taking those measures. I think we should probably, at the very least, mirror their precautions, because it's the same people using the pool.
Well, it's the same people, but it's a much greater number that would be using the pool at the town hall than are at the country club.
It is, and it's a public, you know, we're thinking of in terms of like public health.
Because that's a bigger pool too. I mean, I don't know.
But the country club is not public.
I know.
Yeah.
Neither are, but the downtown country club is much bigger and has probably more people utilizing the pool, and we can put in limits to using the pool in the same way the other pools that are open have. That's just my only point. I think we're being way too conservative on the pool. When if every other pool was closed and trying to determine whether or not they were opening, I could see this discussion. But to me, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, let me
And
ask
I
you.
understand I didn't hear the last discussion, and I'm one vote as well, and it sounds like it really doesn't matter what my vote is. But yeah, I just again support Susanna's idea of finding a way to somehow open the pool.
Well, I don't mind finding a way to open it. I just don't think that needs to be our first step. I think a phase in might be a little smarter move since the numbers are still up right now. Perhaps starting with lane swims, and it doesn't have to be lane swims for a month and then move on. It can move much quicker than that, depending on numbers and depending on how the people react to it.
That's how I feel, Cheryl. I mean, I'm like, if people are able to respect the framework that we put in place and work with us, then I think we need to be open to trying to work with them as well. You know, and everybody, if somebody's not comfortable getting out, you know, they can still shelter in place. There are a lot of people that are choosing to do that. I mean, my parents are, for example. You know, I've kind of talked to some people who I know are still sheltering in place and asked them about the pool. And I mean, they're kind of like, you know, I don't think that they're fearful necessarily of it, as long as there is a very responsible, carefully thought through plan in place that keeps safety at the forefront of everything. So I think that's a good idea. I think starting off with lane swimming, and then, you know, being open at least to seeing if we can do more later.
Yeah.
Can we
lane
talk
swimming? If the swim team wants to come up with a possible solution for them to practice, be happy to hear that. Maybe that could be phase 2, is letting them come in and then open it up after that.
And if you want to swim, that'll make you want to be on the swim team if they could come up with
There you go.
if that's really what you want to do.
Works.
Jared, how do you schedule this if we start with just lane swimming? How does that work in your mind?
Talking to Bo, I think we'd either have to have a direct line to the town hall, to the town pool phone, and you know, we and have to start setting up, scheduling it, and you know, and go from there. We don't have you know, website access to do anything like that, so it'd have to be by phone.
Does that mean you're going to have to, everybody calls and then you have to call them all back? We need some sort of a system so we don't, you know, so we don't have a train wreck.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think we would just dedicate it, even if it came down to, in fact, we may have one that just got turned in. Even if we have a cell line that whoever's going to be responsible for it has with them during business hours, and they can take calls. People don't have to leave messages and everything. To the extent possible, we would field the calls and schedule that way. I don't know of any other way to do it, and be able to put something in place quickly. So we could have a dedicated number and make sure that that's something that's in someone's hand, and even leading up, I mean, it'll be a week before we might be able to get something going. We still have to hire lifeguards and all that. So, in that period of time, that person could be scheduling, and then we would keep up with it from there.
What's on the table? I think we talked 4 hours a day was one of the ideas.
We looked at actually 2 4-hour blocks, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Is what we seem to kind of settle on, doing a 8 to noon and then a 3 to 7 or 4 to 8, something like that in the evening, so it would be available for people that work as well, try to optimize the availability.
Could
like
we
to make-
think about, I'd like to just add one thing. Can we think about lowering, I mean, I know of several students who are in high school who train seriously with swimming and would love to be able to have access to those lanes. Could we make it available so that a 16-year-old could make a reservation and and drive themselves to the pool and swim unaccompanied by an adult?
That's certainly, we can do that.
I think that's a reasonable request. The idea of using this is for it to be used. The idea of I hate calling this person an adult because all these people are going to be adults for the most part. What do we call the supervisor? What's the name of that person?
Well, generally, we have a pool manager.
So
And if you're talking about the lifeguards,
no,
a lot of them aren't going to be adults.
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the person whose responsibility it would be if you have two 16-year-olds who plan their time for lane swimming at the same time, or 6 16-year-olds, and they don't lane swim. It's going to be someone's responsibility to say, that's not what this is. You either have to lane swim or leave. That's the pool manager doing that?
Well, generally, under normal circumstances, we would have hired a pool manager or transferred someone into that position. At this point, it will be Jared or one of his full-time regular staff members that will rotate through there.
Are you guys comfortable with that idea?
Mhm.
I think anyone who's trying to needs a pool for their quality of life, and that because they're swimmers, we have one, and that's part of what you pay taxes for, and that's why I think we have an obligation to open it in a manner that fits CDC guidelines, state guidelines, but it's the town's pool. It's our responsibility in this case to make sure it's all done right. It's country club, that's somebody else's, but we have to take care of this and be responsible for it. So are you guys ready to entertain a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Amy, you had something?
Well, I don't know. My screen just went, I don't know what's going on. It says your meeting should start in a few seconds. And I can't see it anymore.
You're
may be-
here. We see
You may
you.
have, you might have
Oh,
another
good thing I
meeting
didn't,
scheduled.
start doing something crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. On that note, though, I honestly only allocated an hour and a half, and I've got to get my kids somewhere. I am gonna have to jump off either way, but I don't know how to get back to you guys.
Well, do you want to talk, Amy, you should probably talk to us about your circumstances. You no longer live in Signal Mountain. What is your plan?
I think I said it. I wish I could get back to you guys. I think my last council date, I think was, I put it in the email, July 7th. Is that it? I gotta look.
I believe it's the 13th.
13th, okay. I can't find you guys. I do not have any idea how to get back to this meeting. Oh, there it is. Yay.
All right. Well, that was just my question. We hadn't. I just think we probably need to make it public then, because you're living in.
It was in the paper.
Was it in the paper? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that. All right. Okay. Well, at a council meeting is probably a reasonable place for us to talk about the fact that we will have a council seat opening at some point, and one council member that has moved to another state. Just so folks know.
Yeah, I'm just stepping down, Dan. I never said I was moving to another state. I said I was stepping down to handle some family stuff. That's what I put in the email to all of you. So, yeah, I think it is public, and I don't know if you plan on filling the seat or waiting until the election. You already have one appointed, and so that would be 2 appointed open seats. But that is for you guys to determine, not me. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Alrighty.
So are you guys ready to entertain a motion? I guess we can do that any time. And I'll try to state this, and then we'll beat it up and make it better. So I'm just going to take a chance at saying it poorly, that I'm moving that at the earliest possible date based on, I can just say at the earliest possible date for staff, that we reopen the swimming pool for lane swimming by reservation. And I'm wondering if we can just leave it there and then the details can become clearer. Do you think we need to get, this is not normally where the town council would get into the minutia of, of what happens. I think maybe there should be a component of this. I'm sorry, Carol, you're like, what am I supposed to write? Just maybe hold that for a moment and we'll pick up finishing that motion in a moment. What about the concept of pay within this motion? This is a very limited use of the swimming pool. It's gonna cost us money whether we open or not. We lose money whether we open or not. We'll just lose more this way. Anybody have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not a pool pass. Maybe somebody could get a punch card for, 10 uses. I don't know if that's feasible.
You might not be able to meet that if you had enough people get that punch pass. It becomes, this steps us right into the potential unmanageability of this that Bill Lusk was talking about earlier. He's right. This is complicated.
Maybe you don't charge.
Is that, Bill, how do you feel about that idea? I know you may not be for this idea, but if we are doing something, how do you feel about that?
Well, to earlier points, it just wouldn't make any sense to force people to buy pool passes or one-day passes or anything like that if you're going to do it. I'm still opposed to the reopening, where I am on that. And if anyone on here can tell me how we manage the pool better than we've managed Rainbow Lake, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it.
Oh,
but I don't think it's going to happen.
Let's talk about Rainbow Lake for a minute, because we'll do that a little bit more. But our streets, I've been down there. I don't know if you've driven by. It actually has worked pretty well. By the end of the day, the parking lot hasn't had cars in it. I mean, even by 5 o'clock Saturday, the parking lot wasn't even full. And I have a picture. Now, I didn't see the time when the folks who, Mr. Edgman and David Spiller, I didn't see the road at the time, they saw it. But I completely believe that that's what happened, that, there were people parked on that road. It is working, and the council has the ability to say, we could pass an ordinance that says you can't park on any of our streets, but I don't think that most residents would want that. I don't think most residents would want no parking signs up and down most of the streets, especially a really wide one like that. So I think the situation is being managed to the best that it can be. And there are people, I have seen them pull up, who are leaving because they don't want to park a long way and then walk somewhere and then hike from there. Soon we ought to have a little bit of relief taking place in that Signal Point should open up again soon. I'm surprised it hasn't yet, which will add parking there. The concept of adding another trailhead, that doesn't help anything. If anything, I think it maybe makes it worse. There's only so many people that can use the place at one time. One idea that has been floated is parking by permit only, and we can discuss that maybe at the next meeting, Boyd, and some kind of a way to come up with permits that would make it so if you didn't have a permit, special permit only, and you figure out a way to have special permits. I brought this up months ago about, and I don't think anybody's been for the idea, but some places do it with stickers in the windows of cars. If it's resident parking or permit, so there are ways that we can address this. So, I mean, you asked to address that specific thing, and so that's what I'm doing. I think that has been handled. It doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be handled in a different way as we go forward. This pool is a public asset, and we're paying to have it open anyway. And there is a safe way to use it, but it's by limiting it, which is what we're doing with Rainbow Lake. So I think in a way they are similar, and no solution is going to be perfect, but it's not a good idea to throw out the good because you can't achieve the perfect, you know?
Well, and I mean, one key difference here is that, you know, you're going to have your swimming pool staffed with people there, you know, so monitoring people who are coming in and leaving, and making sure that these social distancing measures are being adhered to. And people need to be prepared. If they don't adhere to the rules that are put in place, they're going to be asked to leave. I mean, that's just, you know, the bottom line. So I think we at least have to, you know, try.
So back to the subject of pay. Do we just want to open the pool up by reservation, and when the reservations are done, they're done? Anybody have any thoughts?
I mean,
I'm,
there'll only be so many slots available, so I think that's kind of a given. Question being, do we charge for those slots? And if the leaning is that we would not do that, I would certainly say that we would have to limit use to town residents, because they are already supporting the operation by tax dollars where others are not.
I see four heads bubbling. I think we all agree on that one. Is that true? Anybody disagree?
Absolutely, yes.
yeah, I agree with that.
And the problem with coming up with some kind of even if it's a limited pass to lane swim, there's a chance you buy one of those and you can never get an availability. We could also find out that we don't have that many people that actually lane swim. We can learn that too.
We might.
We
I
might.
mean,
Yeah.
or there might be people that decide that they really want to try lane swimming who haven't before, because I don't know.
Can we try to find, assuming, so Carol, we're talking about doing this residents only, no fee.
You
Yep.
didn't put an age limit in there. Do you want to?
I wish, but I think I'm going to get pushback on this. I wish it could be anyone who's a swim team member, be they, so that they can use the pool. But I recognize that when you get down to 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, that's going to be a problem. So
What's the problem?
you're going to have to be a modification.
And did they even sign up to be on the swim team this year, because they didn't have it? So we don't have, there's not really a current swim team necessarily.
Could we just talk with the folks? Is it Green Giants? That's our
Yeah.
swim team.
Yeah.
Could we talk with them and try to find a way that a block could be reserved for them to manage that block?
Well, we can certainly do that. And Jared, you may know total numbers on their roster, but if we have 8 lanes and we do 2 4-hour blocks, that's 64 swimmers total.
Correct.
Their swim team has a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's
So,
big.
Somewhere in the
granted,
neighborhood of
if
300.
that's open each day, but just to say that would be a big chunk of available time. If we limited it to the older swimmers, that drops off significantly. And
They
again,
could-
I don't know that they have anyone technically on a roster this year.
They might have some creative ideas, though, to perhaps pay a lifeguard, or they take responsibility and have it be outside of the 2 4-hour blocks, you know, have it maybe be in the evening or something. There might be some creative ways, if we get them involved, that we can work something out. Can we explore that?
We can.
Everybody comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that. I don't know that we need to tie the initial opening for lane swims for adults and perhaps 16 and up to the swim team.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
You know, 2 separate things.
Right. But at least let the conversations start with the Green Giants about maybe how it could work for them. As we watch the numbers, and the Hamilton County numbers, I haven't seen them for today, but if it continues the trend of last week, who knows
Yeah.
what we'll see. Yeah. All right. So the motion is 16 and up. Go ahead, Carol.
I was just going to read back what I have so far, but I want you to clarify that point.
Yeah, well, that was the question that Bo was asking. It's legitimate. I think I'll go ahead and make the motion 16 and up. We'll see how that one lives or dies, or if it even gets a second.
So you're
16
going to
and up.
make it. So you're making that a separate motion. I'm sorry.
Making this is the motion, the one motion that I'm making, that we, as soon as is reasonably possible. Go ahead.
Can I read what you started with and what I
Yep.
kind of added as you talk, and let's see where we go from there?
Perfect.
So your original motion said at earliest possible date for staff to reopen the swimming pool for lane swimming by reservations. And then I've added, do not assess any fees to be used by town residents 16 years old and up.
I make that motion that she just said.
I'll second.
All right. Do we want to talk about it some more?
No.
Well, I just want to say, Bill, I understand, and I really understand. This one's tough, and I appreciate and
is.
respect your position on this.
I do too.
Just one vote.
Yeah, I know, but you're an important vote. All right, Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Yes, I do want to make note at this time that Vice Mayor Amy Speak is no longer in the meeting, so I will not be calling on her again. Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
No?
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Carries 4-0. Can
3-1.
3-1. Sorry. My goodness. Yeah. Math. I respect your vote, but I'm totally going to lie about it, Bill. Do we need something specific for council direction to, or do you think council, I think staff should be talking to Green Giants to say, hey, how do you think we could work with you in a way that meets all the guidelines we feel obligated to meet, state, county, CDC?
I think we can handle that.
Okay. Can we have that maybe for the next council meeting?
Sure.
Okay. All right. If everyone is completely uncomfortable with that subject, let's move on to one that's not going to be any easier. We'll talk about the rec fields. And I have asked Mark Wyatt to be standing by in case we want to talk to him, because he's the director of the rec leagues. They're opening up all over the place. The governor, I'm just giving a quick summary and correct me if I'm wrong. The governor has said, and Jared, you probably don't need to go too far, Jared, because this probably involves you too.
No, sure.
Yeah. The governor has said baseball is not a contact sport. He didn't play baseball the way I played baseball, but that's what they're determining. And so they've come up with rules involving masks. You can take them off when you're on the field. But I'm not going to try to recite all the rules. Everybody who's interested in this has probably read all of those rules. The county has opened up its fields already, and that makes it even a little more complicated for us because they play on county fields and our fields, and there's practices and all that going. So one way we could possibly do this, because we do not have the equivalent of a pool manager to be involved in baseball games. If we're going to do this, the responsibility needs to fall on the rec leagues. And in those guidelines, I think and then, again, one guy, one opinion. Bathrooms are supposed to be cleaned every 30 minutes. The town, we don't have the staff to do that. We don't have the staff to wipe down baseball bats, to make sure that no one sits in the dugouts. That's also one of the rules. To make sure that when you come off the field, you put your mask on. So that's why I asked Mark Wyatt to be available, so we could talk to him to see if he would be agreeable to those kinds of things. Anybody else have thoughts? And we don't have to include him, but that's just a way to get this started. What do you guys think?
I mean, I would like to hear from the organizers what their plans are. I've gotten, I think we've all gotten emails advocating for them to have a season, and I sympathize and I understand that their desire to do that. But I think, and here again, I think it's, it's up to the individual families to kind of make determinations what is going to be acceptable for them in terms of what they're going to let their children participate in and what they're not going to let them participate in. And if they are able to put a structure in place with adults present to ensure that this stuff gets, that their game is organized and that the social contact is as limited as possible, I would like to hear them say how they plan to achieve that.
Agreed.
We have them Zoom in at our next meeting.
Well, actually, I think we have Sam, if you're listening, could you see if you could get Mark White on? I asked him to be available for this one. Sam, if you're speaking to us, you're muted.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm actually on the phone with him right now trying to set that up. I apologize.
Yeah. Yeah. So have him Zoom in.
While he's doing that, I think, and I spoke to the mayor about this earlier today, and I do think it's important that if something like this is approved, that it does fall to the leagues themselves to police it.
I agree with that.
The town doesn't get any revenue from it, and we certainly don't have the staff to do it. That I think it would be on them to organize and manage within the protocols they agree to.
We'll still mow the grass and those kinds of things, right?
Right. We'll do the mowing and all, but as far as, I think you touched on it to some degree, sanitizing all of the areas once you're done. I mean, that's not something we can do.
Yeah.
So Mark, you're muted. If you'll unmute your line there. All right.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we just took a vote and you're the new mayor. So we're all going to step down and you get to solve all this stuff.
Well, you have one, you need, before your last tour of duty would be to annex Edwards Point, because I'm not actually a town resident.
Uh-oh. So our general discussion is following the governor's guidelines, and recognizing that there are some guidelines laid out for baseball, softball, all the rec leagues. And by the way, this discussion encompasses the over 40 also, the adult softball leagues. I mean, I guess I'm saying that to other council members. Are you guys comfortable with that? Because they're also requesting to use the fields. That what we don't have, Mark, is staff to meet those guidelines, meaning bathrooms have to be cleaned every 30 minutes. You got to clean up when everything's done. Somebody has to make sure the dugouts are not used, and just all those rules. And the general discussion, nothing has been voted on, is that if a motion is made, a motion is probably going to contain the contingency that the leagues take responsibility for all of that.
Okay. So let me point out a few things that I've done research with. Has anybody had a conversation with Tom Lamb, Parks and Rec, director from Hamilton County.
Not about
I
this
got an
time.
email from him today, but I haven't had a discussion with him.
Okay, I had a conversation with him on Friday in regards to our facility that we utilize at the Shackleford Ridge location, and he made it known to us or to me that every single municipality has opened up their private fields that are owned by the municipalities within Hamilton County, and Hamilton County has opened theirs up as well. And his point to me was, your Signal Mountain owned facilities are the only ball fields that are not open in Hamilton County right now. Saudi Daisy has theirs open, East Ridge has theirs open. And so, I know that's not what you had mentioned there, Dan, but I just wanted to kind of lead in with that and say that we are the only people that can't physically play organized sport on our fields at this point in time. I spent last weekend in Dalton, Georgia with my oldest son at his tournament for a select team, and it was interesting to see their guidelines that they had put in place since it was Georgia, it was Whitfield County, and they were social distancing. They had teams come in and then teams leave before other teams came in. I mean, it was well organized, and it was done with volunteers. It wasn't actually Whitfield County employees doing that. Tom Lamb said that it is up to their lease agreement organizations that utilize the Hamilton County fields. They will be in charge of the guidelines put in place. And his recommendation was that the parents do the majority of the screening on the front end before they go with temperature checks and things of that nature. So, but yeah, so what we would do is we would host games on a staggered nature on weeknights. And I believe we can make it all work with as of now, we're at 260 plus kids that want to play, which is 72% of the kids that we're going to play in the spring. And so the sentiment of the families within the community is that the majority of them want to play. And I'm just speaking to baseball right now, not softball. And so, we would start a game, say at 5:30 on one field at the town hall facility. We'd start another game at 6:15. I believe what would happen, and based off of the county guidelines and the state guidelines, is that the open facility areas can actually house more than 50 people as long as they aren't congregated in a small area. And so you would have, in this regard, and just with the town hall facilities, you'd have probably 4 areas. You'd have one bleacher that you couldn't have more than 50. The other bleacher that on the other field couldn't have more than 50. Each field couldn't have more than 50. And then the parking lot couldn't have more than 50. And so when we start looking at numbers of 10 kids per team, you're talking 20 kids on the field, that there would be no umpires. It would be the coaches doing the umpiring. So you're talking at less than 30 people on a field at any given time. We would ask for folding chairs to be set down the foul lines up against the fence on either side of the field, 6 feet apart. The kids would put their bags there, and they would go sit there during their batting inning, and they would have one kid on deck and one kid batting. And that's how it would run through. We would run, a game would go from 6:30 to 7:45, and then those kids would leave, those families would leave, and the next game we'd have start at 8:15 and go to 9:30 if we were end up playing 2 games on that same field. It looks like we wouldn't have more than one age group at that facility at a given time. And by that, I'm saying, say like the 9 and 10-year-olds. We have 64 to 70, I believe, in the 9 and 10s that want to play. That would end up being 6 teams. And so you'd have 2 teams play on one field. 45 minutes later, you'd have 2 teams start. While the other team is playing on one field, they would start on the other field. The first game would end, then 30 minutes would elapse. Another team would come in, 2 teams come in and play on that field. So you're trying to avoid passing in the parking lot with each other. Everybody goes in, gets in their spots, and then the game gets started in that regard. We would have no concession stands. There would be no cash being exchanged in that regard. We wouldn't have announcers. We'd have a parent run the press box a scoreboard, and then that would get sanitized when they were done. Just one person up there is all we would allow, no children up there. And the way we would handle Timberlinks is we would assume Timberlinks to be a practice-only facility. So if a coach wanted to practice on a night he wasn't playing at the town hall, he would have access to that as long as he scheduled it with me on the first hand, so that we know that he's not showing up there with 2 or 3 other teams there. But we feel that we could have a 8-week schedule starting next Monday, June 15th, and go through August 8th, and play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. No, like I said, no more than one age group there at a given time. So Monday we would have 3 to 5-year-olds, Tuesday 4 to 6-year-olds division, Wednesday 7, 8, and then Thursday 9 and 10. And then we probably give parents a break across the week, week over week, so they're not playing the exact same night every time. We probably schedule a rotation through that through the 8 weeks. Give them 8 games in. And what that allows us to do, just so you know, is it allows us to keep our $30,000 of revenue generated through the submissions, the registration of the kids, as well as the $15,000 in sponsorships that we get for our uniform and our field sponsors, and then the lining the outfield sponsors as well. So it gives our league a good set of financials for a year that's been, nothing but ordinary, or anything but ordinary, I guess.
If, heaven forbid, we did have a breakout and a nexus point was determined to be a game,
Okay.
what sort of liability are you facing?
So we asked our insurance company about it, and they spoke to pandemic as part of being listed on our insurance policy, and they specifically said that it's a case-by-case basis. Determining our board is covered up to $2 million. The individual league is covered for various amounts depending on what the injury or whatever may be. In my 4 years of doing this, we've never had a claim. Obviously, this is a little bit different. We have had injuries, but those have been handled via the parents' insurance companies, like a broken nose or something like that. In this regard, being a little bit different, they did say that there is pandemic on the policy, but it's handled on a case-by-case basis. And they told me there's no guarantee that they would allow us to be not liable there. It just depends on a case-by-case basis. My guess is that if it came to that, it would come back to what policies did you put in place? How did you handle that? Were you following the state guidelines? Were you following the county guidelines? That sort of thing. And
sure. I'm asking that to ask the next question for
okay.
Harry. Harry, if you're still there. Yeah. Liability for us.
So, same, Mark, are you Tom's son?
I am.
Okay, I thought you might be. I've talked to our insurance company carrier about the pool, actually, not the ball field, but I think it's essentially the same. Governmental entities have some immunity from lawsuits. Doesn't mean somebody won't sue us, but as long as we are complying with the governor's orders, we're probably going to be okay.
And to add to that, also there is a waiver that everybody signs, and so nobody steps on our fields without signing that waiver, and we hold all of those via e-signature, and so that abstains us somewhat, I think, from injury and illness and things of that nature from an insurance standpoint.
Right. There are no pandemic police that exist anywhere, but and I know this is kind of a loaded word, but I think each one of us feels not just a fiduciary responsibility, but a moral responsibility to do this properly as this thing unfolds. And it sounds, I really appreciate the organization that you've brought to this thing. And we may be last, but it's also the first time we've met since I think the rules changed from the governor. So
You're
we
correct.
could-
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
9 days ago is when they allowed access to come to Hamilton County fields.
Right. We meet every 2 weeks. So this really is
Sure.
the first opportunity, which is why I ask you to be here today. So if it's going to happen, we can make it happen, reasonably quickly. But, the fears are, my internal fears are the kids can be asked to do things and they will. The adults can be tougher. And the stands in particular, all of our stands are small. So 50, I just don't see how you get 50 people on one set of stands with them being 6 feet apart. But then it becomes complicated. Well, these two are married, and this is their younger son. And do the playgrounds, do the playgrounds remain closed near the baseball fields? It's just all those kinds of things. Are you willing to accept that you have to be the police for that?
Absolutely. So what I would handle is I would handle the kids, parents, the families we would probably tape off every 6 feet. And I believe the stands may be 5 bleachers high. And we would have a first row, a third row, a fifth row, which leaves you about 5 to 6 feet in between. But if you think about it, your faces are 6 feet apart and you're not facing each other. And then we would go 6 feet left to right as well. We wouldn't let multiple families sit next to each other. And all this will be outlined to the people. And it really has been outlined to them already. We've had significant discussions with them via email where we've said, this is what we want to do. Do you want to do it? And then, the numbers came back in from our questionnaire that overwhelmingly, the 80% of the people that have responded to my questionnaire have said they want to do this. There's maybe 10% that haven't responded to it yet, which is why the number of kids who want to play from where our registered number in the spring is 72%. But yeah, so we would clean in between on those bleachers. We've already looked at solvent solution, something like that we could do like a sprayer on them to keep them clean. We wouldn't ask anybody to come if their kid had an illness, even if it wasn't COVID-19, just to play it safe. And a lot of this is us being at Signal Mountain, a close-knit community where you're taking some of the trust in the parents that they're going to do what they're supposed to do. Doing this for 4 years, the new kids come in, the 3 and 4 year olds. Those are the ones that I don't know as much, but the kids 5 through 14, I know almost every single one of those parents. I've had discussions with them as they ask me. I've said the same things to them, how we're going to handle it. We've also got a great group of board members, commissioners that want to do this, want to be here with caution. We've got Erlanger people. We've got people that are in the medical field, in the EMS or the ambulance industry. So we've got people that have experience within the last few months of dealing with COVID-19. And so we'll put together a general-based guideline, but we'll also drill it down into our facility. And I would not open the playground up. I would tell the people that if you want to sit out behind the left field on, say, our upper field or lower field, then you have to be near the creek that runs behind it. But you cannot go to the playground. I mean, that's something that would be presented to the parents. And we would ask at least 2 board members to be there at any given time, meaning or another one. I think we got 12 on the board, so it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Most of them are coaches as well, so if they're not there, then they're going to be around and have access to monitor one field or another field for a given night, and that's what we do. And it's just a matter of discussion with somebody if we see them breaking the rules put in place. And
all right.
And we have. My experiment this past weekend in that select tournament in Dalton was very eye-opening. I did see one team with their arms around each other and their heads in a huddle doing a cheer, and that kind of shocked me a little bit. And that was the only team that I saw doing anything like that. My son's team didn't get near each other. They sat apart, and they did a cheer without putting their hands in, and we sanitized. What's one thing we'll do is we'll ask the parents to bring their own hand sanitizer, and every time the kid comes off the field, we'll ask the parents to make sure their kid sanitizes their hands before they sit down in their chair.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you for that. I mean, trust is something that always comes with conditions, and you have demonstrated clearly that you guys have considered what the conditions are of this thing in order to make it work. So, does
It sends a
anybody?
good message to our kids too up here, to
Yeah.
the kids that are going to participate in this. They're being asked to, I mean, they've had to give up a lot. And so I think that they're hopefully going to see this as a privilege, that they're being able to play. They're going to be having to go back to school in August with a whole new set of rules. And if anything, it's a good life lesson for them to learn this, participating in sport. I think there's so many good lessons that kids learn with youth rec sports, obviously, but even under these conditions, I really respect your thoroughness and appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, and I appreciate that. One other thing that I didn't mention yet is that if somebody's child or parent came down with COVID-19, we would ask them to disclose that to us, obviously, and then what we would do is we would quarantine that team from the ball field for 2 weeks. And so if somebody's child became ill, we would not allow them or their team to be at our ballpark until the quarantine period finished.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark. I think we probably need to finish discussion with the council, but do appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you letting me be on here, and we'll do whatever we can and to make this happen if you guys decide so.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
Jared, anything your concerns in this?
Dan, is that to me?
Yes, sir. What concerns do you have if the council does this?
As a father and a dad, I 100% agree with Mark. I want, my kids, I got a 12 and a 14-year-old. I want to see them out playing, be at the pool, the gym, the ball fields. 100% get it. Our recreation hat on, as a person that's been in this position for 14 years and in total for 25 with the town, I see that it could get to be a mess. I understand having volunteers, and I get it, and I know that a lot of the time they are in the right frame of mind. There are a lot of times too that volunteers are supposed to clean up, supposed to do this, supposed to do that. It inevitably comes back on individuals in my department.
If that happened and it didn't work, these are special circumstances and the council could step in, whereas we normally wouldn't do that.
Sure. No, absolutely. And again, I can't agree with Mark more. I want this to happen. I just know, clean the restrooms, take care of the garbage and things of that nature. It's good in thought, but a lot of the times it doesn't happen the way they think it will. Yeah.
And, we could sit here and offer suggestions as to maybe how to mitigate that, but that would fall on you to figure out how to mitigate that.
Yes.
Oh, I think we mitigate that by saying on the front end that we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that it falls squarely to them. If they need a key to the restroom so they can open them and close them, they're just up the hill from where the ball fields are. These trash receptacles that they can transfer stuff to. I mean, we'll do what we can to make it easy, but they'll have to do it.
And if they don't?
Then we'll be back with it for another discussion with council.
I think we need to be back for another discussion with council on this in 2 weeks to find out how it's worked, regardless. Is that reasonable?
I think it would be advisable to revisit any of these things that
Mhm.
we're doing on an ongoing basis.
Question for Harry or Bo. Do we have an indemnification agreement with the leagues?
I don't know.
At this time, we do not. Again, it wasn't that long ago, we were told that they weren't gonna have a season. So, I think that would be something we would want, be an indemnification agreement or an agreement that they are accepting certain responsibilities and releasing the town from those responsibilities.
Yeah, including indemnification.
I think that's a good idea.
So you can draw that up, Harry?
Yeah.
All right.
And I don't think they'll have a problem with it.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how should this motion look? Because we didn't talk about a date. I know they're anxious to get back at it, and the vote may fail, but do we need a date specific motion? Or is this another? This one's less dependent on town as it is on them. It's more so dependent on our permission. And the only thing that I've heard is a suggestion that there's an indemnification agreement.
I think you can just make it, from what Mark said, he wanted to try to start next Monday. But I'm sure if that's the case, then we want to start practicing ahead of time. So you could make the motion that the fields be opened subject to the completion and execution of an indemnification agreement. And as soon as we can get that done and signed, then they'll be good to go.
Okay.
It might be wise for us to include the issues related to social distancing and all of the stuff that Mark talked about that they would do, so that there's a written agreement that covers their responsibilities,
right,
as well as indemnification.
And the things that they're agreeing to do are things that are outlined in the governor's order that talks about how you can do baseball, right down to how you sit, and that they can't be in dugouts and when they have to have masks on and all that. Do you think that would be sufficient to refer to that, Bill?
In my opinion, no. Harry would know better, but I'd be more comfortable if we had an agreement that is specific to the leagues that are going to use our fields, so that we have in writing that they are agreeing to do certain things, rather than just, we could reference the governor's guidelines, but
my fear is that you don't write down all the things, and therefore you don't have to, if you get specific like that, the things you don't have on there, you don't have to do. Now we could call Mark back up and ask him if he has something already in writing that we could refer to and vote on it based on his presentation. What do you think about that?
well, that's a good start. But I think Harry probably knows better than any of us.
Well, if the governor's guidelines are written down somewhere, then we could have them agree to the guidelines as provided in the attached exhibit, whatever. Then then everything that the governor's got in his guidelines is covered, and we haven't forgotten anything.
We could also stipulate that that's not an all-inclusive list, and that they're required as well to take just general precautions and be responsible for doing the things in that list, like cleaning the bathrooms every 30 minutes.
Yeah, those kinds of things probably aren't in.
Things that are on the list, but it doesn't say who's going to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the trash and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let us look at the written guidelines from the governor, and we'll put something together.
Well, I'm trying to find, just quickly to do that, we can have a motion that is contingent on that, right? Even if we haven't written it yet. correct?
Yeah, if you're comfortable with Harry and I compiling that agreement, then you can make the motion subject to that agreement being compiled and executed.
Sticky wicket here. And again, I don't know what a wicket is or why they get sticky, but there's no one really managing between the different leagues. You know, Mark represents one league, but as he mentioned in passing, there's a softball league. There's also a there's an adult league. There's the middle school age league that Dr. Bowman has been working with, and we have been involved in the past, or have we been involved in the past with the coordination of those fields, or are we just opening this up for a free for all?
The middle school age that uses a county facility, we don't have really anything to do with. We've helped out as a courtesy with some maintenance and stuff.
My point is practice. They all practice all over the place.
We would have to know what leagues, and each league would have to execute an agreement. The more Jared, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, if they're using Town Hall and Timberlinks, those are the normal spaces they use. Softball uses Marion and Driver, and the adults use Driver.
Correct.
So they're pretty much segregated in terms of what fields they use already. We would just have to make sure that each league that chooses to use them executes an agreement.
So part of this needs to be, someone needs to contact Tom Francescon, I guess, for the adult leagues.
I've been in contact with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the softball leagues, the girls softball leagues,
Mm-hmm.
women's softball.
In contact with Dave Wagner as well.
Okay. All right. Can we make our motion encompass all the leagues executing an agreement? Does that sound okay, Harry?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yes.
I think the agreement for the adult league would probably be somewhat different, but should be fairly easy to whittle it down so that we're dealing with adults policing themselves as opposed to parents and coaches being responsible for kids.
All right. Somebody's whispering and we can hear you. All right. Carol, you want to read back what we sort of have as a motion?
I haven't really heard you guys put together a motion. I'm sorry.
I was hoping for a miracle. Harry, will you help us out with this one?
Let's see. Somebody needs to make a motion that the town allow its facilities to be used for non-contact recreational leagues, subject to execution by league representatives of an agreement with the town.
I'm comfortable with every word of that. Anybody else see any need to change it? All right, then I make that motion.
Second.
There you go.
All right, and we discussed this thing quite a bit, but it had to be built.
I do have, not to complicate things, and I don't know, Jared, you may. The youth sports leagues are 501 somethings. I don't know if the adult softball league is, do you?
I don't believe they are, no.
So they may not be a formal legal entity. So executing an agreement may be a little more complicated there. Just for the record as we go into this.
I wonder if they have a board of some kind.
They do have a board, yes.
And they have a board chair then, perhaps they could.
Yeah, they have a president or chair, yes.
I wonder if we could require something signed by the board that they agree to this, even if they're not a specific 501, just so that we know that it's not just one person saying, yeah, we're going to do this.
Right.
Yeah, Jerry, do you know who the president or the head of the board is?
Give me just a minute.
Or you can find out.
I know who the previous two were, and the gentleman who's president right now, his name escapes me, but I can find it.
Okay.
Karen,
Well, I would
wouldn't-
think we ought to get whatever that board, an authorized representative of that board to agree that the league will comply, et cetera.
All right, what else? What? We're not policing this. I mean, so it's hard to say what are the metrics for success. You know, it's just the metrics for failure. It's pretty bad. You have a nexus point for the spread of a pandemic within your community. Yeah. This is complicated because there's no one who goes out with a tape measure in between adults and measures them to see if they're following it, or checks people's bloodlines to see if they're related or who lives in what household. That's just not going to happen. So, but my general thinking on it is, again, if you don't have trust, you've almost got nothing when it deals with people. So we just got to trust that folks are going to do the right thing and continue to encourage it, assuming how the vote goes. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I think for clarity, it'd be good to have Carol read us the motion.
And I might have one word I need some help with. Town allow its facilities to be used for non-contact recreation leagues subject to execution by league representative on agreement with the town. Is that right, Harry?
Of an agreement.
Okay.
All right, will you take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. All right, so we've talked about pool, baseball, MACC. Anything else we need on rec facilities, anybody?
I have one thing to touch base on. Been contacted by a gentleman with the proposition of conducting a monologue type play at the amphitheater. It's in the lines of the Twisted Roots series. He wants to do that and sponsor it as a benefit for the Playhouse, since they weren't able to have their regular play. We've discussed spacing and how they would do that. Again, it is a monologue, so there isn't actor interaction or anything like that. I've gone over and looked at the Playhouse, and what he's talking about seems to make sense. He's talking about the first 2 weekends in September, so it is a ways off. but wanted to get some input from council on that prospect.
So, I'll talk to, it's, those of you who know, it's Dennis Parker. He wouldn't mind me saying his name. And the purpose is just to try, because the Playhouse is not going to make the money it normally makes, is just to try to do something to benefit them. And monologue is one person on the stage at a time. The way our stage is built there, and it is ours, sometimes it's easy to forget that belongs to the town. It absolutely distances people, beyond what anything would require. And the space is big enough that you can limit the number of people that come in and space them out. So I like the idea. I think it was a great idea. It was all Dennis's that he came up with. So anybody else?
How many performances would there be? Just the one, or during those 2 weeks?
I think there'd be 4 over the 2 weekends.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it as long as, like you said, the distancing where people can sit separated from each other. Sounds like a nice idea.
Yeah. You know what? We'll be at right before an election time then. It's pretty common during those things for politicians to pass out things. We might want to find out a way to say you can't do that.
That probably would be a good idea.
Can we do that, or is that
no politicians allowed sign it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And probably the concession stand would need to be closed, or let people bring their own whatever they're going to bring or something. But
yeah, the one thing that I'm not sure about, and I need to talk to him about, is the length and the necessity for restroom facilities. And if the play generally brings in the porta toilets and all that, I don't know if that will be necessary. If it is necessary, we would need to make the same stipulations that they have someone there cleaning them on a regular basis as required. But that's really the only thing that I can see as an issue. When I went and looked at it, like you said, when he's talking about spacing of groups or pods of people, there's quite a bit of room and ability to do that. I think it would work fine.
Okay. Do you need council action on that, or you just want to pursue it?
If we have consensus that's fine, I'll move forward with it and give you an update as soon as we get details worked out.
Okay. So,
Carol, what you got?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
If we're done with this section, before we go into the next one, could we take a short break?
Sounds good to me. Sam, can you put up we will resume, it's 6:23. That's resume at 6:30. Is that reasonable?
It works.
Okay. See you at 6:30. Make sure you mute your video and your audio. Okay. We're all here.
We're all here.
Dan's there. Okay, so SMEF proposal. Somebody's speakers turn up really loud. You guys hearing the delay? Oh well. SMEPF proposal. So, Boyd, do you want to take this?
Sure. The last time we met and discussed this, council voted to move forward with it. So since that time, we've drafted two documents. Still getting it.
If everyone could mute if you're not speaking, that helps sometimes.
Cheryl, it seems to be on your computer. I'm not sure if anything would have changed.
She's muted.
I just muted her.
Okay.
So since the last meeting, we drafted two documents. One's a memorandum of agreement between the town and SME Preservation Fund that lays out the provisions for them operating the MACC for a period of 1 year, assuming that the agreement becomes effective July 1. It is for a single year and captures the provisions, the terms that we've discussed, and that they would be responsible for the operation and not only the operations, but operating within the guidelines that are in place at that given time. So given the constraints of any protocols and requirements relative to COVID-19, they could function in that facility in the same manner and doing the same types of things that the MACC has done historically. In addition to that, the other agreement or document is an actual lease agreement, providing that they are going to be operating in that facility. They would lease the facility for $1 again for a single 1 year term. It is a document that we've actually had previously to some degree when there was a proposal for a similar arrangement. So we took that, adapted it to this scenario where it is a single year, lays out what they will be responsible for. The proposal that started all this will be attached to it. That lays out what the town will provide, and these two documents together would be the guiding provisions for the agreement and the lease. So we pull these together. Harry has reviewed them and made some recommendations which were incorporated. We met with SMEPF and went over it with them. A couple small revisions from that. So from the administrative side, they've all been reviewed and are offered for consideration by council before we move any further. If you're comfortable with these or we make any changes and choose to move forward, then we do tentatively have Planning Commission meeting scheduled for June 16th. Since this would involve the lease of a town facility, it's a mandatory referral to Planning Commission. So we have a meeting scheduled for June 16th at 6 o'clock for them to consider this for recommendation. So that's where we are.
All right, does anybody have any comments on the proposed lease agreement or MOA? You're
Do
muted.
we know, do we know how these compare to any agreements that Bachman may have with the town of Walden, if any?
Not off the top of my head. We have reviewed those in the past when we started working on these, and I think these documents are more detailed and more operationally oriented to our type of facility than what they had was. But exactly how they compare, it's been a while since we looked at those. But we did look at that and the one from McCoy Farm and Garden as well when we started working on this some time ago.
Thank you.
Yeah, I looked through those. These are a little more strict. And of course, this is time limited as well and requires can I speak as a designer for a moment who designs most of the posters for things that happen there? The disclaimer that I am, should this be passed, that I'm now going to have to put on every nice piece of artwork I try to create, advertising that something is happening there. I wonder if we could, it has so much wording in it about what it isn't. I wondered if it could be more concisely said by what it is, but I also recognize I know how to make fonts smaller. And so you can have a large paragraph. It's not enough that I would stop it down, but Harry, is there a reason why it has so much in there about a legal reason? The way it reads is that this is number 10 on page 3 of the for discussion. Any materials prepared for public distribution, such as brochures, flyers, promotional materials, or any other form of publicity related to specific fundraising projects or solicitation campaigns seeking donations to benefit the MACC, the building or associated property shall contain the following statement explaining the relationship between the town and which it needs to finish right there.
That needs to be filled in.
Yeah. It says, this is what it says. The Mountain Arts Community Center, MACC, is operated by SME Preservation Fund, SMEPF, a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. The facility is leased from the town of Signal Mountain, and the responsibility for all programs, activities, events, and functions therein is assumed by SME Preservation Fund. I just wonder if all of those, could it not just say MACC and SMEPF just to shorten some of that, or is all that necessary?
Well, I think we want it to be in there for the town. We want it to be clear to people that this is not a town function. I'd prefer it be in there.
Okay. You didn't put a stipulation about the font size.
Whoops.
Okay. I think I had one other note that I wanted to ask you about. Let me see if I can find that. Should we, as the end of this contract term approaches, which would, if we approved it, it would be July 1st, 2020. If the consensus should be that everything's back to normal and the town wants to go in a different direction and hire a director at that point, which, you know, that's what this is about, is like 1 year, let's get this past this weird time. And I think I answered this and just sort of thinking this through. If there were programs that had been put in place by SMEPF headed into the fall, we could just make sure that there was some continuity if a change took place. I guess that's what I'm concerned about. I wouldn't want to see SMEPF and the folks volunteering and putting together programs get to the place where July 1st comes around, then everything that was, or be afraid to book going forward. Does that make sense?
Yes, and one of the stipulations is, they can enter into agreements with teachers and so forth, but those cannot reach beyond the term of this agreement. But it also requires that 90 days ahead of the expiration of this agreement, the two parties have to stipulate whether they wish to continue or not.
Okay.
So that gives us, if basically 8 or 9 months into this, we need to be revisiting that and making a determination. And if we choose to revert back to a town operation, that gives us 90 days to look for a director and all of that. If things are going well and we decide to extend this agreement, that gives them 90 days to further extend agreements and all, moving into the next period.
That's fair. All right, those were my two comments. Anybody else have any comments? So is consensus that we move this forward to the next meeting for a vote? Assuming that, even the planning commission has to happen. The planning commission has to happen one way or the other.
Yes, the feedback is back. It is a mandatory referral. But if the planning commission should not approve it, council can still approve it moving forward. So it has to be the planning commission for action, but either way, it would need to come to the council at the next meeting, which would then give us, we would still be ahead of the July 1st start date.
All right, any objection to moving forward from this? So head shaking no. Okay, next item. Carol, anything else you need from us on that? Okay. Planning commission application. We have a planning commission applicant. Yay! And looks like a great one. Any comments on, I don't have her page up in front of me. She's the vice principal at Nolan. Am I correct?
Listed as assistant principal.
Assistant principal. Okay. I don't have it in front of me. I'm just going from memory. And I enjoyed reading her application. It's Dr. Vicki Anderson. It's just exciting to see people who talk about they want to get in and be involved in their community. So we're not voting on this now, right? We're just moving this to the meeting.
Correct. If there's consensus that you want to move this to a vote, we'll have a resolution at the next meeting.
Anybody have anything you want to add to that? So consensus to move forward. Looks like that's a yes.
Okay.
Next on the agenda, communications from the mayor. You don't want to hear any more from me. And my wife tells me that I look like I'm angry in everything I say. So I want to try to not be.
Next item on the agenda is the manager's report.
Is it? It is. Oh, he's right there. Go ahead, sir.
Just a few things. As is often the case, we've touched on a lot of what I've been working on for the last 2 weeks. So I won't be going over that again, but I want to let you know that the AMI water meter RFP is set for bid opening this coming Friday. At that point, we'll pretty much have all the pieces together on the AMR meters, installation for those, and then the AMI installation as well. So we'll try to package all that up in a reasonable format and get that to you guys. And at that point, I think it might be a good idea to schedule a meeting that we could dedicate to that. So that'll be the bid process of all that is about to come to a conclusion, and then we'll see about getting it in a format that we can discuss and deliberate on. I want to let you know, Recycle we returned to the normal Tuesday through Saturday schedule. And anyone who's listening that went today, not knowing that, I apologize. We put it out on Facebook and all, but with any change in the schedule, sometimes it's hard to communicate completely, but we're back to the old normal schedule. You don't have to go on your trash day, but we are asking folks to come during the week as much as possible. And we're continuing the drive-through process. We're actually getting some very positive comments about that and how well it works. When it bogs down, it does do just that. But normally, it's actually working well and people like it. Also want to let you know that
Can I ask a recycle question before you leave? Before we leave that subject, someone asked, and I've had this happen a couple of times. It's still residents only.
Right.
If you are a business in Signal Mountain, I don't think it's written down anywhere, or we ever said. But I said, if I was a business, and I mean, we have a recycle center to support our businesses as well. So, do we need to do something about that?
And I don't know that, I mean, if they're a business that has normally used the facility, I really wouldn't differentiate between a independent individual resident versus a business. They're part of our community as well. They pay
That's what I thought.
Taxes and sales taxes that are generated there. I wouldn't differentiate between the two.
All right. Thanks.
Where was it? Oh, for lack of a better term, the big TDOT project for the front of the mountain is moving forward. We have, it's currently in planned review. We have a set of those we're looking at for our water utility and the engineering that needs to be done for the project down on Palisades to relocate a portion of that line for this project is underway as well. So that's come up a couple of times recently, and just want to let everybody know that that project is in fact moving forward. And I anticipate that we'll see significant movement on that in the next several months. And that's all I have.
All right. I don't have anything to add for communications from the mayor. Communications from committees or boards. The planning commission met, but we just as a training session. And so we did about an hour of training last week. That's that. Anybody else? Any other communications from boards, council members? All right. Tentative agenda for June 22nd. Let's take a look at that.
In addition to what you have there, we will have a resolution authorizing an agreement and lease with SMEPF. And we'll also be adding the public hearing ahead of the second reading for the budget. So that will likely just come ahead of the ordinances.
Is it a reasonable amount of time to ask you to present ways that municipalities deal with parking, just as discussion items?
Sure.
For instance, like Bill said with Lookout Mountain, and just some different ways so we can talk about what some of the options are.
In general, but focused on the Old Town Rainbow Lake area.
Carol, did we make any other notes of things we wanted to add? You're muted.
You've actually added several things. But most of them deal with motions that you've made about the agreement, bringing back items dealing with the the leagues and I'm not seeing anything specific. I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. No, but it helps. I like the way we're doing this now because it's a little easier to check at that point, and you're the most trustworthy person in this group as far as writing it down. All right. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Wow.
If I could, I would.
Can I make a motion to adjourn? Does anyone want to second that?
Second.
We'll just do a consensus. Who wants to adjourn? We're adjourned. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Have a good night.